Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen. All in crypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another daily cryptocurrency market update. I'm wishing you all a happy Monday, and as always, in this market update, we have a lot to get into. We're going to be starting off with some news and interesting things that have taken place over the past 24 hours. We're going to be looking at a report that essentially suggests that $93 million poured into Bitcoin via an ETF would up the price of Bitcoin via around about 1%. And the reason that we're looking at this, or we're going to look at this to start off with, and then we're going to be looking at a report from CoinShares that looks at the inflows to exchange traded products that are crypto related last year, is because I feel like there's a lot of anxiety perhaps around what happens when a Bitcoin spot ETF, which could come this week, according to BlackRock, does eventually get approved. Now, lots of people are sort of citing the whole buy the rumor, sell the news thing. I think there's definitely the possibilities for this. And then when we sort of go over and look at the charts, last week we were saying, look, Bitcoin's in a bit of a store box. Lots of our targets for Bitcoin that we had from earlier on in 2023 were made. Lots of targets made across the board. Lots of resistance coming into play with the stock market. I think Boeing is looking at a particularly nasty open. And ultimately, there's also this kind of macro headwind that is the market's now rethinking the kind of interest rate pricing that they've had for this year. So lots of interesting things going on. We're going to try and sort of round it all up and, of course, related to the cryptocurrency market. And we've also got, I think, something that's very interesting in regards to the fact that somebody sent some money. I think it was $1.6 million worth of Bitcoin to Satoshi's wallet, which may be a bit of a sort of legal trap. And I wouldn't be surprised, just like what we saw with Binance, that the SEC and bureaucratic agencies don't try and actually go after Satoshi's wallet, because ultimately, if they're going to allow this industry to succeed, it's a big threat to them if they don't already know who Satoshi is, and if it wasn't them, like the CIA and people like that, then it's an issue. So we're going to be getting into all that. Without further ado, guys, let's get into it. Let's start things off as promised with this report. And I think this was from the Bitcoin strategy platform. It essentially says $93 million of inflows into Bitcoin would equal a 1% price gain. So every $1 billion in ETF flows would equal round about a 10% price gain per BOFA. And of course, that stands for the Bank of America. And this, of course, is a report published by BitcoinStrategyPlatform.com. So this is very interesting. I bring this up to address a little bit of the anxiety around a Bitcoin spot ETF. Because we've had such a kind of, or coming out of, I think we came out of in 2023, the bear market, and there was a fundamental technical change to the markets that we identified. Because we're so used to sort of, negative price action and real volatility, I think people get very worried when there is volatility in the crypto markets. And I think it's important. And what we try and do on this channel is understand the broader trend, which is an uptrend. Until we see reasons change from that, we keep on keeping on. So this was rather interesting. To couple with that news, I want to share with you the 2023 Digital Asset Fund Flows Annual Report from CoinShares. Now, in 2023, inflows were 2.7 times greater than in 2022. Bitcoin, of course, is the main beneficiary. And I'm bringing this up because when we have, so right now there's a number of crypto-related exchange-traded products. Of course, we're all familiar, and we looked at Grayscale's digital large cap fund yesterday with the Grayscale investment products. You've got CoinShares, you've got 21 Shares, you've got Purpose Investment Incorporated ETFs, you've got ProShares and all this kind of stuff. CoinShares Digital Securities, so on and so forth. This perhaps is a good barometer for the sort of inflows that we may see with the application or approval of a Bitcoin spot ETF. Now, I think the inflows will be significantly larger to a Bitcoin spot ETF, i.e. offered by BlackRock, simply because it's a far wider audience. If you look at what they did with gold back in 2004 when they allowed an ETF, that ultimately had massive ramifications because BlackRock then pushed it as a product. I think the same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin. And some key takeaways from this are that digital asset investment products saw $2.25 billion of inflows for a full year in 2023. marking its third largest year based on data going back to 2017. Importantly, the inflows were 2.7x the inflows seen in 2022, marking a dramatic turnaround for the asset class. Remember, this was all signaled technically first. We started going into 2023 looking at the bullish divergence for Bitcoin, and then of course made our play accordingly. Bitcoin was by a wide margin the greatest beneficiary from improving investor sentiment, with a $1.9 billion inflow, representing 87% of total inflows. And some of the other beneficiaries, the main altcoin really, of course, was Ethereum, Solana, and then you've got the likes of Cardano and Polkadot also seeing inflows, and you can see roughly the kind of jurisdictions that, or the kind of countries that this was coming from. So the anxiety that we see around a Bitcoin spot ETF approval and the buy the rumor, sell the news thing, of course, people are positioned for this. I think there's going to be, I would, on a base case, expect it to play out. However, I think it's short-lived if it does play out, and I don't think there's any guarantee. And I think if you understand the context of the trend that we're in, it's an uptrend, and you shouldn't bet against that. So kind of a don't worry remark from Allincrypto. I want to share with you some interesting news before we now dive over to the charts. And that is this is from Jeremy Hogan. This has been an attorney that has been very vocal in the XRP lawsuit. And he's looking at the fact that someone sent $1.2 million in Bitcoin to Satoshi's Genesis wallet. And the real question is, why would anybody do that? Why would anybody take $1.2 million of their own money and send it to Satoshi? Are they just that grateful? Is it Michael Saylor tipping Satoshi for all the money that he's making and is likely going to continue to make? Remember, we've looked at MicroStrategy as a stock and suggested it was going to do very well from sort of 2023 onwards. Jeremy Hogan's sort of summary of this was why the only thing that makes any sense is that the sender is flushing Satoshi out. Under the new IRS rules, you have to report any receipts of crypto over $10,000. So Satoshi has to dox himself or break the law. Now, we looked at this amendment at the start of the year. I think we looked at it on the 4th. I think that this only right now applies to businesses. However, the reason that I bring this up is we saw the SEC, or we saw the United States government really, and it was all sort of forecast in the mandate that came out in 2022, really do a hostile takeover of Binance and put the new CEO essentially in place, or allow the new CEO to be in place, and basically bring Binance under their regime. Now, who is Satoshi, I think, is one of the great mysteries of our time. I think when something's too good to be true, it usually is. And I ultimately think that if you look at the foundings of many technologies, you can see the CIA all over it. If you look at Facebook, if you look at Google, if you look at all these things, not only that, today they all have higher up CIA agents, usually in charge of like public relations and, equality and things like this. So this is, I think, very interesting. And I'm not quite sure if this is correct, but I do think we are going to see some shenanigans in regards to Satoshi's wallet and how they may look to perhaps confiscate it, restrict it, whatever that may be. And whilst it's dormant, I don't think there's too much of an issue, but I could see in the coming years, certainly the early signs of movement of Satoshi's wallet. For example, what happens if the individual who has, or the group that has Satoshi's wallet actually sends the Bitcoin back to the participants? That would send, I think, a lot of fear throughout the markets. So let's dive into the charts. Now we've gone over the news, and really let's kick off in regards to where we left off. Now, Bitcoin met our target that we had for it in 2023, which was the 42,000 range. It's been consolidating around there. And usually when you hit a target, you rest. And it's not just Bitcoin that's ran into its target. We looked at the likes of Coinbase. We had the likes of Polkadot getting to $9, which was a target from lower on down this year. You can see beautifully the lower down head and shoulders target that we had for Coinbase got hit, and now it's taking a break. So you've got internal targets being met for crypto, and we could show you multiple different things. You've got a lot of resistance across the board. If we use Hedera, which is a project we're very bullish on, you can see this is the roadmap we've got for Hedera, but you can see it's ran into resistance. So you've got a lot of resistance coming into play for crypto, even the likes of Ethereum, running into resistance over here. And on top of that, you have a lot of resistance coming into play for the likes of the stock market, which we've previously highlighted, and you can see that here. So what happens here could be a bit of a cup and handle that sets up. You've also got the likes of the CPI coming out. What's going to happen with an ETF? I think there's a real anxiety around the entire space right now. That's not just an uncertainty with crypto in the short term, broader term, we're in an uptrend. It's also uncertainty in regards to the stock market. And one of the interesting things that markets are doing right now is repricing their forecasts for rate cuts. So I've always said that I actually thought it was very premature that we were going to get our first rate cut in March. And I actually think the Fed has every reason, given the amount of debt that they're issuing, to keep rates elevated for longer. So there's a kind of, I guess, anxiety around a lot of markets. Obviously, we spoke about the Bitcoin ETF and what that may bring, the approval of that, lots of resistance coming into play. It's absolutely my opinion to kind of round everything off, to suggest that this is just short-term angst that's going to lead to a broader uptrend. If we look at Bitcoin, there's no doubt in my mind that Bitcoin is in an uptrend. We did look at this smaller pattern here, which was a continuation pattern. Big slam down, a little bit shaky, and now it seems to be finding its feet. The question is, where does it go from here? I would certainly like to see it get to the, and we'll zoom out a little bit before we wrap the video up, sort of 48,000 range before it pulls back a little bit. So maybe you get the ETF approval, it shoots up, pulls back, and then sets up for further continuation. Then we can project a target just like we did with 42,000 for perhaps the end of the year, and we're getting that for many altcoins. So to just sort of look at the total market cap of crypto, or the total two, this is very healthy and common after you break out. You stall before you see further continuation. And we've shown you this on many, many stocks out there last year. Let's just bring one up, perhaps the NASDAQ. You can see, let's use a different NASDAQ chart. You can see when you break, you consolidate before you see that continuation. Let me just make that a little bit bigger so people can see it. But this is the road that I think crypto is now on. Injective was a really good sort of, I think, blueprint for what's to come for the general cryptocurrency space. You can see once you break out of this base, you come back and retest. Altcoins are here before you see a further uptrend in SHU. So that is really all I've got for you guys. If you've enjoyed this content, a like is appreciated, so is a comment. And on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Have a happy Monday, and I'll see you all in the next one.